fall asleep again.
Welcome back to Liquid Lunch. Little cancel winter there today, all day. It's election day. We've got Brian Baumal here, Gestalt psychotherapist, who's in the same riding as I am, right, Brian?
Yes, I am. Do we mention the riding or do we not bother?
I don't even know what it's called.
It's Toronto Danforth.
Okay, Toronto Danforth.
So we're in Jack Layton's riding.
Actual riding, so, which is going to be great. If he wins, then our rep will be, anybody switching cameras over there? Then our rep will be the Prime Minister. Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be awesome. He'd be in our riding less than he is now. Yeah. Actually. Because Lord knows I haven't seen him.
No?
But you'll know where he is, hopefully.
That's very true.
You know, I don't think I've told this story before, but one time his car had a flat tire right in front of this bar, just right here on Dundas Street. And I happened to be standing out in front, and I looked over it, and there was this guy and a girl, and they had the, they went into the glove compartment, and they were like looking at the instructions, turning it upside down, trying to figure out how to change a flat tire, and it was Jack Layton.
It was Jack Layton.
And who?
Well,
it better have been Olivia Chow.
Here's what happened.
Outside of a bar.
Anyway, I've been in that situation where I had a flat tire and I didn't know what to do.
Really?
Right? At the dump yet. I was at the dump and I got a flat at the dump. Okay.
That sucks.
And anyways, but by this time I learned how to change a flat pretty quick. So I went over and I basically changed Jack Layton's flat tire. But the thing was too, and the girl he was with was an Asian woman, and
doesn't say much.
I'm just saying. I said to Jack, hi, and also I wanted to apologize to Jack because I was at a party with him a couple of years before, and I said some unflattering things to him, and I wanted to apologize for that. So I took this as an opportunity to make good, also, and it kind of fix my own karma.
Right.
And I said, and so I said, Jack, and this must be. I said, this must be. And he said, "This is my assistant so and so." It wasn't Olivia.
It wasn't Olivia Chow
at all.
Right.
So he saved me from a social gaffe. So
Twice.
he's a good guy.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Did he remember you for the slagging you gave him from the years before? Or did you actually get around to that?
He remembered the party.
Right, when you tweaked him on that. And then
he remembered the party. He didn't remember, I don't think, the specific conversation.
Good.
But I did get a chance to just
Yeah.
apologize, and everything was groovy, and he was a good guy.
Your karma's corrected.
You talk about changing tires, and we can talk about how psychotherapy, it changes people, just like
Changing a tire when the auto's broken.
When the auto's
What do you
broken,
do?
when the auto's broken. Well, it's very interesting. You've obviously got to fix the tire.
Absolutely.
But when we ourselves have to change, a lot of times we're not in the same dire emergency as when we have to change a tire. We want to lose 10 pounds, or we want to save more.
Or we might not know what it is that's really getting us down. It could be, I guess, a few things, whether it's not specifically a flat tire that stopped the car. Your carburetor might be acting
right.
out.
Or your car is making a sound.
Right,
and
it's just not right.
It's not right. So, yeah, a lot of times the change that we need to do is either not imperative or very ill-defined in our mind. And so psychotherapy is designed to help us make that kind of change. It's exactly the kind of thing that I do.
And do you find like a lot of people just want to turn up the radio to get rid of that noise, or do they actually, now when people come to see you, are they at a crisis, or are they just kind of, there's something wrong, right, and I need to talk about it?
It's a little bit of both, actually. It's a wonderful question and a great observation. It's a little bit of both. Sometimes people really are in a crisis. One of the groups of individuals I see are those who've suffered a life change. So people who have, let's say, sudden grief in their life or need grief counseling, who have gone through divorce, have an illness, have a partner who has an illness. These are people who are really in crisis. There are other groups of individuals I see, some with psychological conditions. They've lived with depression, anxiety, ADHD, and they've lived with it for a really long time, and they manage to cope with it. But they're starting to get sick and tired of it. But they've had the depression, they've had the anxiety, they've had the ADHD, they've had the anger management issue for so long in their life that it's not an imperative kind of change, like we talked about change our tire. It's more like, now is the time to improve the quality of my psyche.
Right, because sometimes you're almost defined by that, about your anger or your whatever, that whatever affliction or whatever that's going on in your life.
Well, that's it exactly. I actually have back pain, for example,
Right.
and I'm now exploring opportunities of getting rid of that pain, and it just amazes me how much I'm defined by that pain because I've had it for 30 years.
Right, it affects every waking moment of your life.
Yeah.
Some days you
People
just-
get identified with
Right.
with their health conditions.
With their
They
health
may-
conditions and their psychological conditions, or they identify themselves. One of the most common things I hear from people who are suffering psychological conditions are, it's my depression that makes me this way. It's my anxiety that makes me this way. And a quote from somebody I saw who had ADHD. ADHD is the only brain that I know. And it's almost as if they're talking about these conditions just being outside of themselves, when in fact they are really they are depressed, they are anxious, and they have ADHD. And one of the first things that we try and do is get them to quote unquote own it. Own that. Now, if you saw me roll my eyes at that, it's because the process is much more involved in that, and I don't badger people and say, own your depression, own your anxiety. Rather, what I try and do is work with a person very subtly on exploring those issues in their lives. So rather than saying own it, I have them explore it. So in some cases, we may ask, what are the benefits, or we may explore, what are the benefits of your depression? We can ask how the depression defines them.
Well, right, exactly. Like a lot of people, when you say like quote unquote own it, they use that as a crutch to say, I'm not going to engage in certain activities or be a part of this part of your life because I'm depressed or I've
Right.
got ADHD or don't count on me for anything because...
I would argue at that point in time they are not owning they are not owning it. They're sort of putting it. It's a part of them.
Right.
And the difference. I understand that the difference is subtle but very important. I think it's a part of them. It's sort of like saying that I take my watch up, but this watch is a part of me.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. What do I have to do to get to own it, to love it, to care for it, to realize that it's all this sort of
It's a
stuff
watch.
that's a part that it becomes a part of me. So we have to bring the person and the psychological condition closer together and get them to sort of own that and experiment with that. And that's where the art of psychotherapy comes in, because it's not an easy process at all.
Well, how do you, what's your process if somebody does come to you, say, for the first time and says, I want to get to the bottom of my, say, ADHD or my depression?
Mm-hmm.
How do you start with them?
It's a good question. A lot of times people come in and they will say, I am depressed and my depression causes me A, B, C, D, E, and F. So we begin to work on A, B, C, D, E, and F. So for example, they've stayed in a job that they're not happy for or not happy with for too long. We'll begin to explore. That. Some people are really, really good at exploring their depression almost immediately. So I could say, draw your depression. Tell me about your depression. Or write a poem about your depression. Let's sing a song together about how we're both depressed. And I know that sounds a little flaky, but that, and just that's typically not how I would start with someone unless they're really gung ho on doing it. But it would be more about exploring how the depression affects their life, and then they begin to realize that it is themselves, or it is they themselves that are staying in the job that they don't like. It's not the depression that's keeping them there. It is the person from head to toe themselves that is keeping them there.
Because change is a scary thing,
It's
isn't it, for
difficult,
people?
yeah.
Change is actually very, very scary. Every single credible psychotherapy book that I have read says that anyone who wants to really make a substantive change that process will involve anxiety
Absolutely.
for individuals. And the one thing I will say about politics and the election right now is that one of Harper's main messages has been all along, give us a majority, we want to stay the course. And, that's a classic way of using change anxiety just to say, you know what, let's try and stay exactly where we are. And I know that the NDP has gained momentum, and Layton's in my riding, and I voted, and I thought for a second, I wonder how many experienced parliamentarians the NDP actually has, and how many people they have in their back pocket to run the Ministry of Finance, for example. And I don't want to get into politics, but I'm just saying, when you start into the process of change, you begin to have second thoughts and anxiety about it. And I don't want to get into a political argument, but I think I think that's a very good way of talking about how change produces second thoughts in individuals and makes us think a little bit.
Well, this is why people, I think, don't make the change. They stay depressed, and they're willing to do it because it means they don't have to change.
Right.
Right? But now taking a slightly different tack, I want to ask you if, because somebody that's staying in their job that they're not happy with, because sometimes people say, if you want to be happy, follow your bliss, right? Do what makes you happy,
right?
And so in this case, that would mean changing your job,
Sure.
despite the fact that it's a bit of a scary thing to do. But if you're not happy, make a switch. Do you buy into that? Follow your bliss? Does that make sense?
I think that following one's bliss can often be the same thing as following one's depression. And this is it's a very important distinction. So I don't want to quash anyone's bliss or anyone's dreams, but what we have to do is really make sure that whatever is happening with them is authentic to themselves. And I know a lot of coaches talk about authenticity, and they sort of preach that word, and I wonder the extent to which they know how to explore someone's authentic self, because it's an exceptionally difficult and delicate process. So for example, if someone wants to leave a job that they are making a good sum of money at but are very unhappy with, and they want to go out and busk for a living or be a juggler, as an example, because that's their true passion. Again, let's explore that. Let's think very, very carefully about that. And the only way, as far as I'm concerned, that someone can tell whether they are being authentic or not is when the light for them finally goes off. So if someone says, I've always wanted to be a juggler for 20 years. Well, can't you just go and do it on weekends? And I almost sound judgmental when I say that, but these are the kinds of questions that we begin to ask. Like, why do you want to do it at the expense of giving up a good job? You better answer that question for yourself before you make the change.
Right. And a good job, of course, you're talking about like the monetary things.
The monetary, sorry.
Right.
Yeah, the monetary parts.
Right,
yeah.
You know what, if I think in your own mind, if the money doesn't matter, but you can see yourself as a struggling poor juggler. The struggling juggler. That's a bar downtown. But, can you say to that person, if you're going to be happy, like genuinely happy within yourself to go out and juggle, and the money isn't bothering you, then that's your bliss. Go for it.
Right. Go ahead, and I have absolutely no issue with that. But it brings up in me a lot of anxiety, because the responsibility has got to be on the person themselves to make that change, and I can only begin to just sort of shed light and keep holding them to themselves. So, for example, I recently had a client where the topic of the discussion went off of her problems and her issues, and she said, "Well, aren't you going to give me advice?" And I said, "Fine, do course A, B, and C." And she said, "That's it?" I said, "Well, what else
That's
do you want me to say to to you at this point in time. The other thing too is that when someone comes in and talks to me, whatever their view is of their situation is distorted by their own neurosis and their own view. The few times it has happened to meet the partner of a client of mine, because I get an image of who the partners are in my head, and then to actually meet them, even if it's just, they're dropping off or picking up my client just to say hi, and realize that is
Completely off,
not
yeah.
who I, based on what, so a lot of people will distort their reality. So part of what I do is just get them to focus in on what the reality actually is. If someone wants to be a struggling juggler, say that five times fast.
Now, Brian, have you ever dealt with anybody, like a client that has made a change to go to where they think that they want to be and then become disillusioned and
Yes,
maybe not done their due diligence and looked into something thoroughly, but just had this romantic vision of what I want to be, and then went and did it and went, uh-oh.
Yes, I have.
What happens with that?
I just had someone recently. I didn't see this person for very long, so it's hard to talk long term.
Right.
It is incredibly disheartening to someone who has followed a dream and it hasn't worked out for them. Very, very disheartening. Their whole ground gets shaken. Their whole identity gets shaken.
That's why they invented pharmaceuticals, SSRIs,
That's
right?
why big
Right,
pharma,
Brian?
go
that's
down
why
this
big
road.
pharma exists. Yes.
I have to make these jokes, Brian. I know it's not true. I know that Gestalt psychotherapy provides.
My standard
The Soma
view.
production company is.
My standard view. I'm not a medical doctor. If you want to take drugs, please go and see your medical doctor.
Yeah,
and
please
let the
replace
medical-
them. I mean, sorry.
No. Let the medical doctor describe or prescribe. I
Prescribe, yeah.
haven't read the studies. I don't advocate either way. So I encourage anyone who wants to take drugs to see them.
Okay.
Do your
Well,
due diligence.
No, but
exactly.
okay. But in a situation like that, where somebody's had all their dreams taken away, and they're in that state where they really don't know what to do next, and probably everybody goes through that at some point,
I think so.
even if it's a loss of a loved one, like a girlfriend or
Pet, whatever.
or a father, mother dies. I mean, people get in that situation, they really don't know what to do.
What do they do? What the thing that they have to do ultimately is to begin to build self-support for themselves. That's how everyone lives. That's how everyone heals themselves. In that they find something about themselves, something in their life that that provides them with the support they need to carry on. So someone who has really gone through something like that has lost their ability to self-support themselves. So for example, anyone who is an addict or exhibits addictive behavior relies on whatever the addictive substance is to support themselves. And I'm not talking about I'm talking about anyone from someone with a very mild addiction, and I see a lot of people with mild addictions. People who say, you know what, I only drink at parties. It's amazing. Again, I'm not a neurologist, not a psychiatrist, don't study that addiction kind of thing, but people who only drink and smoke at parties or certain social situations and don't have a craving for any of this stuff at work. It's amazing. So, but these are people who self-support themselves externally, and then you've got someone who is so depressed that they cannot support, or someone who is so shaken they can't support themselves in any way possible. So we try and build the support up in them. And the thing that I do as a therapist that is different from most coaches out there is that I will not use my own inspiration to help them self-support. So in other words, I'm not going to be the one to make them better. They're going to be the one to make them better. And again, from a therapist's point of view, it's a very, very tough situation to sit in front of someone and not say, oh, but it's going to be better
Right,
tomorrow.
you want to buoy them up a little bit, but you're right, everybody is different. So your situation, your success can't translate to somebody else per se. I guess
Right.
sometimes it can in a sense, but
And it's also a matter of timing when someone is ready for it. I think one of the biggest clinical successes that I had was someone whom I saw for 6 sessions and was struggling with 6 or 7 sessions and was struggling with an issue that was critical for her, but she felt it was very she trivialized it a lot. And at one point she was in a lot of distress, and I just looked at her and I said, you know what, I want to share with you what I see. I see someone in front of me who is intelligent, caring, and giving this decision every ounce of respect and diligence and thought that it needs. And that snapped her out of it just like that. And I was completely amazed because she actually had a reaction to that statement. She said, you know, I can't even accept that from you. I can't even accept that what you're saying is true. And then a couple of sessions later, she goes, I got it. I finally got it. By not being able to accept that from you, I can't accept it in myself. Now I can accept it in myself. Thank you very much. I now know who I need to go to get help for my help for the specific issue. And it was done. So a lot of it's got to be very timed. And part of the interesting conversation that I had with that person after I made that comment or that intervention with her, the following session, I said, you know, that comment that I said to you, I said that wasn't some sort of hippy, dippy, trippy bullshit line that I was feeding you. And she says, you know what, you're not the type, I can tell you are not the type of person to feed me that kind of line. So if you're in front of someone who's always inspiring you, always pushing you, always telling you that you're great because you are great and you're the best there ever is, when a comment comes through like you know, they feel that they haven't earned it, and they don't know what to do with it when it or they're not entirely sure how to work with it when it does come through. So, you know, by holding that, by actually sharing how I feel in the moment and not being so positive and inspiring all the time, gets people to really think when a comment like that comes along.
Mm-hmm. Don't have a lot of time left, Brian. You've left us. I just have another question.
Yeah.
Though. I want to kind of bring it back to what you talked about, back to that following your bliss thing. Because
Sure.
you said there that it only works. I think you said this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it only works when the light gets turned on, right?
Well, I said that you have to. Someone who follows their bliss has to make sure that they are authentically following their bliss.
Right.
It has to be authentic.
How do you know that? Because I mean, and maybe it's maybe really we do know, but I know that people, well, it's beaten out of them, and I don't mean that.
Or they just
always.
have a romanticized
But they get,
vision.
you know, their parents say, well, you know, I know you want to be this, but you should be a lawyer
Right.
or whatever,
Fault.
and
Right.
then so you do. The parents put all this incentive or whatever, just saying, so they become a lawyer, and are not very happy with it because they never got to do their bliss.
Right.
That juggler, that struggling juggler.
So the question then the question then is what? How do you
know really what it is that your bliss is? That it is the authentic choice.
Is it tuned
that you
into
wanna
us
make?
like at a young age that we kind of...
Well, I think it's tuned away from us, as was
Right, yeah.
as was
He was saying,
mentioned,
yeah.
or it could be tuned, or it could be tuned into us. You know, the fact is, how do we know? It's incredibly difficult, and our society is so multifaceted that, you know, we cannot possibly be our jobs all the time. We have to be a taxpayer. We have to be a family person if we have a family. We have to be a partner if we have a partner. We have to save for our retirement. We have to be a citizen. We have to vote. And so being a juggler or a lawyer is only a part of what it is that we do. And I remain. All I can say is I remain open to somebody coming to me and saying, you know, I'm a lawyer and I want to be a juggler. I remain open to the fact that, yeah, sure, they want to juggle, go ahead. But you know what? Working through the therapeutic process, I mean, you know, they may come to realize, you know what? It sucks to be a lawyer and it ain't so bad after all, because the money's good. I've got a good family. I can support my family. I don't have to worry about finances. And I will say this, I have followed sort of my passion of being a psychotherapist. And I am very, it creates a lot of nervous anxiety around me and and my family. It's not an easy transition at all. And do I wake up going, my God, I should not have done this? Absolutely, I do.
You're making me think about that Saturday Night Live sketch about the reduced expectations. It's because it's like I'm almost getting this, like everybody wants that magic bullet, and this may be why pharmaceuticals are so widely used. Everybody wants that magic bullet. Everybody wants to live happily ever
They
after.
want to feel good.
And you know what?
Yeah. Whatever
Maybe
that is.
it's just
Right.
that's
Killer
just not what's
performance.
happening.
Yeah.
Or it's hard to feel good all the time. It is, our job is not us. We cannot juggle 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. At some point, we've got to piss. I mean, what more, and you don't want to drop whatever you're juggling in the toilet with you.
Well,
At
no.
some point, you've got to stop.
You got to struggle.
You got to stop.
Struggle
So
that
you
juggle.
can't do it all of the time, and you have to hope that what you do is worthwhile for you. One of the pieces of advice, and I overheard this. I simply overheard this at a networking event when someone said, "You know what?" He was talking to someone else. He said, "You know what? As long as you are happy with the core of what you're doing, everything else will be okay." And I wish to God I knew who said that. Maybe they're watching right now, because I would love to meet that person, because I believe that if you're okay with the core of what you're doing, everything else may fall into place. Or if you're okay with your home life being good enough, or being great because you earn a good sum of money for it, then that may be all that it takes. And if you come to realize that, that's the elusive self-support that I'm talking about. And know that can change too. So for example, someone may say for 10 years, you know what, for 10 years it was good enough for me to be a lawyer now. Or it was good enough for me to be a lawyer, but now I really know I want to focus on my dream. So I think being authentic, another way of saying being authentic, is knowing how you can support yourself. And knowing that your support can shift from one thing to another. That may be the best definition of authentic change I can give.
Okay, great. Well, Brian, thanks for coming in today on Election Day.
Oh, my pleasure.
And sharing this with us. So if people are out there right now, they're resonating with what you're saying, and maybe they feel they need some help, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Best way is my website, www.torontotherapysite.com. I can see it up on the screen. My last name is spelled correctly. Thank you, guys. I love when you do that.
All right, Brian, thanks. Thanks for doing this today.
My pleasure.
And good luck to all of us with
Yes.
this election today. It's going to be exciting, almost
day
more
tomorrow.
exciting than the Montreal Boston game,
No, man. could it
which
be that
ended
exciting?
badly. I just
It
hope
did-
tonight
well,
doesn't end as badly.
Some people it ended
as that.
well. But I agree with you, sir.
Yes, of course. Okay.
All right.
That's it for the show. Thanks, everybody. Stay tuned. Wine Lady's coming up in about half an hour. We'll see you all tomorrow at noon for more Liquid Lunch right here on ThatChannel.com. Beautiful.
Look at the state of all of this shit running round our heads. Hold up, we're lost in the fog. Grow up, I'm switched off. It's all coming down to the core. The treaty is up, I must admit. It's come down to it. face in the mirror, a fortune to tell, and kiss it all goodbye.